that consequences rather, if the military doesn't reverse its actions. At the moment earlier today, I interviewed the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation in Myanmar. His name's Thomas Andrews. Here's that conversation right here on News Now from Fox. Now on News Now from Fox, I'm being joined by Tom Andrews. He's the Special Rapporteur on Myanmar at the United Nations. Tom, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Let's get right into it, though, because almost a week ago, there was a coup in Myanmar. What does that mean for Americans here at home? Why should we care about that?
Well, first of all, it was a coup d'etat. It was a violation of the basic rights of the people of Myanmar to determine for themselves what kind of a government that they want, the future for their country. This was a government that was moving steadily toward democracy, forward toward democracy. There was an elected parliament. Nobel Peace Laureate Aung San Suu Kyi was heading up the civilian side of the government. And so they were making steps forward toward democracy and the rule of law. And whenever you have a democracy and a rule of law, you have an ally that you can count on. But when you have a military taking power by brute force and arresting people like Aung San Suu Kyi and the president of the country and hundreds of others, you have anything other than a force for stability and peace, and you've got a potential big problem on your hands geopolitically.
And one of the things I noticed too, usually coups are quite violent. They usually end in bloodshed. This was, relatively swift. I don't know if peaceful is the right term, just because they were detained, obviously. But what did you make of that? How did we get to this moment?
Well, it was quite extraordinary. There was an election. The military had a dog in that fight. The political party representing their interests. They did very, very poorly, and so they were warning that they might take drastic action if something wasn't done to correct the outcome of the election. So we thought that was something could happen, but frankly, the Constitution is so much in favor of the generals anyway in Myanmar. It was written by the generals. They have enormous power, enormous control of the government. So I was frankly surprised that it happened. But as you say, 4 o'clock in the morning, people were woken up. Aung San Suu Kyi, the president of the country, key leaders of the government and the political parties, woken up, taken out, put under arrest. Not only that, but civil society leaders, journalists, others who the military were fearful could cause them trouble internally. They were put under arrest and detained. So it was, let's just get as many of the key people that we think could cause us trouble, put them behind bars before anybody wakes up, make the announcement and see if we can get away with it.
I wanted to talk as well about this relationship between the civilian control of the government and the military. And there's been just a lot of friction in Myanmar's history with that. Is that kind of the culmination of this moment, that friction, that tension that's been going on for the last 40, 50 years?
Well, that tension, generated that constitution, which gives the military enormous power. It also gives civilian government, elected democratically, authority over key aspects of life in Myanmar. So it was that kind of compromise that was established through lots and lots of negotiations and fits and starts. And so people thought, okay, finally we have a stable document that's not by any means perfect, or many people would argue fair. At least it takes us in the direction of a democracy. So we were surprised. That was not enough for the generals. They wanted complete, absolute power, and that's what they're trying to get away with.
And because, like you said, and I remember during the Obama administration, that was kind of our first overture to Myanmar in some time, and it was on this process of democratizing, and it was kind of held up as this beacon of look what they're doing. And yet you see the events of last weekend. Has that just been kind of blown out of the water? Is that not even operative anymore?
Well, it's a major, major step backward. And what we know from experience is that the generals want to make money. You know, they want access to international markets. They want to be a player. If not the generals in power now, then the generations coming after them. They want to get rich. So the promise of having economic sanctions lifted from them, allowing them to make investments, sell their products freely, have access to markets like the United States, that was a very big plum. So they said, okay, we'll accept a certain degree of accountability in exchange for getting access to markets and making money. So they've thrown that aside, and I think that is exactly where we need to go back to. There has to be a price that they need to pay for this. And the thing that seems to get their attention, we know it has in the past, is blocking their access to making money. And that's what I think is on the table right now.
And speaking of that, making money, it looks like sanctions might be imposed yet again, though, on the country because of this. President Biden released a very forceful statement. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell really, really strongly condemned this as well. There's a lot of bipartisan condemnation here at home. What can, the American power brokers here in America do to kind of, stymie this or rectify this? Is there anything?
Well, money talks. And we're getting the general's attention with the talk of money. I can tell you, I'm talking to people all over the world. And when President Biden made that statement and put sanctions into the sentence, that got a lot of people's attention. Now the Europeans are saying, okay, well, if the Americans go forward with sanctions, maybe we should be talking about coordinating sanctions so that the bite would be even bigger. We're talking Australia, Canada, other countries. So the ball is beginning to move. Discussions are underway right now. What kind of coordinated action could we take to really put a bite into the wallets of the generals? And hopefully we're going to get an answer to that very soon.
And, in this part of the world, we'd be remiss if we didn't bring in China and how they're related to this right now. As we know, they're, the dominant force, the emerging power in the region. What role do they have to play in this?
Well, traditionally, China has always protected Myanmar from critics talking about things like human rights. They've always protected them in the Security Council. They've always provided them with weapons. They've given them access to the Chinese markets. So they've always been kind of the escape valve, if you will, for the generals. The fact of the matter is their power is limited. And so the generals don't want to only be dependent upon one country, namely China. They want to be able to diversify and have access to markets around the world. And even in the case of China, the Security Council of the United Nations 2 days ago brought this up and put it on the agenda. And they emerged with a statement in which they called for, now this is China agreeing with this language, for the release of all the people who have been detained by the generals, to call for respect for human rights, to call for support for the democratic transition of Myanmar, the continued democratic transition of Myanmar. So it gives you a sense of, even among their friends, there is a revulsion of what happened and deep concern about what happened. So we're able to make progress where some people might have thought progress was not going to be possible, given the fact that the China card has always been something that Myanmar has been eager to play.
And just lastly for you, what are your friends and your contemporaries in Myanmar? Have you been talking to them? What have they been saying? Are they, pessimistic?
They're afraid. They're afraid. And I'll tell you, I was talking to some not too long ago, this morning, and I was engaged with them, and I could hear some noise, and I says, what is that noise I'm hearing? And people at 8 o'clock every night, people bang pots and pans, right? And make a big racket, and it's going on all over the country. There's fear of going onto the streets. There's fear of being picked up. There's fear of that knock on the door. But they figure, people think if from our own homes, in our backyards and so forth, we can start making noise. Teachers are doing some walkouts. Healthcare workers are beginning to talk about strikes.